The Pharisees and Sadducees came up to test Jesus and asked him to show them a sign from heaven. But he replied to them, "When it is evening, you say, 'It will be fair weather, for the sky is red.' And in the morning, 'There will be a storm today, for the sky is red and threatening.' Do you know how to discern the appearance of the sky, but cannot discern the signs of the times?" And the Jews persisted in asking him, "What sign do you show us as your authority for doing these things? What then do you do for a sign so that we may see and believe you?" Even Herod wanted to see Jesus because he hoped to see some sign performed by him. Jesus said, "Unless you people see signs and wonders, you simply won't believe." Luke tells us the story of a rich man in Hades asking Abraham to send Lazarus down with a drop of water to cool his tongue. When told it is impossible to cross the great chasm between them, the man then begs Abraham to send to his 5 brothers to warn them about this place of torment. Abraham says if they did not hear Moses and the prophets, they would not be convinced even if someone should rise from the dead. We are so lucky to be living now, in the sense that we have been given the greatest, most mind-blowing sign of all, Jesus' resurrection. I think we are too far removed from it nowadays to realise the immensity of what the disciples experienced. Jesus predicted his resurrection. He said, "Destroy this temple, and I will raise it again in 3 days," the temple being his body. The 4 Gospels do not necessarily report the same things, as you would expect from eyewitness reports, but all 4 Gospels tell us that Jesus' tomb was empty, evidence that Jesus' body had been raised. On the evening of the first day of the week, the disciples were gathered in a locked room of a house because they feared the Jews. Jesus came and stood among them, saying, "Peace be with you." He tells them to look at his hands and his feet, and tells them he is not a ghost. No human could choose to be resurrected, as no human has power over death. The resurrection is validation of Jesus' divinity and our assurance that we too, through him, can inherit eternal life. After the resurrection, Paul tells us Jesus appeared to Cephas, that is, Peter, then to the 12, then to more than 500 believers, many of whom were still alive at the time of his writing to the Corinthians. Jesus then appeared to James, then to the apostles, and lastly to Paul. Paul was an enemy of the church and persecuted many early believers, but was completely changed by his encounter with the risen Jesus. He spent the rest of his life preaching the resurrection until his martyrdom. Jesus' brothers were not believers until after his resurrection, and his brother James is described as a leader of the church who was also martyred. Crucifixion was a common form of Roman execution, and Jesus' crucifixion is mentioned in non-Christian historical sources, such as Josephus and Tacitus. Even unbelievers must agree that the apostles sincerely believed that they had seen the resurrected Christ, to be willing to suffer and die for this knowledge, how they did. And they would have known that they were putting at risk of persecution those who became Christians through their teaching. What would they gain from this if it was not true? not personal gain, not riches, not an easy life. Christians used as human torches by the Roman Emperor Nero would surely have given them second thoughts if it was just a deceit. No, it was to keep the commandments that Jesus gave them. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, your soul, and your mind, and love your neighbours as yourself. The disciples had such a great love for humanity. They wanted the world to know that the way to eternal life was to believe in Jesus and to ask for God's grace and forgiveness. As Jesus says, we cannot do it ourselves. It is only by God's grace that we can be saved. This is our promise of fair weather in the future, our red sky at night. See you next time, and don't forget the subscribe button.